What's up guys, welcome to another video, and today I'm going to be showing you ToAH hard 70, 80 and 90, so the boss stages of those floors. And we're just going to go through the strategies of each boss. You don't have to, obviously you don't have to copy the exact team that I have, right? There's a lot of ways you can or a lot of different teams you can use to beat these bosses, right? But I'm just gonna go through like what I used, right, and just give you some ideas on what bosses, what units you can use on these bosses, right? And we're gonna talk about the the boss abilities and how to counter them, basically, right? So with this team on 470, I actually tried to make this team as easy to make as possible, right? Now Beretta is farmable. The Mav is not farmable, but he's nav free, so chances are you'll get him eventually, fairly easily. Konamiya farmable, Spectra farmable. Delphoid not farmable, but it's a 4-star, and Delphoid's not specifically needed in that slot. You can use other things over her. She is just nice for this boss though, because she's good for ToAH in general as well, because she's got a skill reset, so that's good for bosses. I'll get to that in a second. She's got immunity and cleanse, which is nice because of the bombers in this stage, or at least for the Seara boss. Okay, so this is the Seara stage. Also, just a note, I did show that it's ToAH hard at the start of the video, so just in case you're unsure whether it's actually ToAH hard, yeah, it is. Now for the trash waves, I'm actually autoing this, right, because I'm lazy, but you can just if you manually use this team, it'll be much easier, right, because then you can select the proper skills to use and all that. The first one was pretty straightforward. This stage is a bit tougher, only because they hit really hard, like these P-rays and the Harpies. If they hit you, they do hit quite hard, so best thing to do, try to make sure that you don't get hit, so use crowd control a bit, like skills. Things like stuns are good, so on my team I've got Beretta stuns from Despair. Mav has stun on first skill, and Konamiya also has stun on first skill, right? It's RNG, but you can with violent procs and stuff like that, and just having lots of turns, you'll be able to keep them stunned, or you should be able to stun at least half of them, right? The more you can stun, the easier it is. And Spectre is there to slow them down as well, alright, push attack bar back. Now for the actual Seara boss, I did manual this. Now, to discuss the abilities of Seara, so most people should know just from looking at the monster, you can look at her skills in the monster section. She's got a bomb on the second skill, right? Places a 2-turn bomb that counts down, and also a dot. Then the third ability is detonate all bombs that are currently on all enemies. Okay. So obviously you don't want her to have a turn, and you don't want her to use that skill. So the way to prevent it is either you can use taunt. So for example, Mav's second skill, you can see that there's like a smiley debuff thingy there, well there was. That's a taunt ability, right? So when you taunt the boss, they'll only use the first skill on you, right? And the first skill, it gives her attack bar, so you still need to make sure that you can stop her from moving too soon after that. But that's only if she crits, and you should be able to keep her under control fairly easily. Alternatives to Mav, you can also use something like a Jubel. Jubel has taunt on second skill as well, 2-turn cooldown, and when he gets hit, it reduces the cooldown on taunt. Alright, so other alternatives also are Armin and the battle mammoths like Basalt or Talc. Preferably Basalt, because of he's not elemental disadvantaged against Seara. Alright, so those are some other options you can use for taunt. The other way to deal with it is to use skill resets. Right, so Delphoid is the example here. Delphoid's got reset on second skill, so she can do that on the boss, and therefore put the second and third ability on cooldown, and therefore she'll only use the first skill, right? Now As for the ads, you can see there was the JoJo's and the Leavies. I probably should have talked about them first, but what you wanted to do against those is use Spectra's AoE to slow them down. Obviously, Beretta can use the Phoenix Fury to place dots and hope they stun, and then try to stun. You want to try to stun the Leavies most of all, just because they have revenge, right? They have a passive that revenges whenever you hit them. So to reduce the amount of damage you're taking, you ideally want to stun them if you can. So if you're bringing things like, you can bring things like Varad, Tyron, Water Homunculus, Bombers as well. Anything that can stun, right? Or freeze, and that will prevent them from revenging if you're taking too much damage. Now, obviously because they have bombs, right? As long as you keep Seara under control, they might place bombs on you. But to sort of counter that, you can run things like cleansing, well, obviously cleansing, right? Cleansing or immunity buff, and place the immunity buff on you before the Jokers move, right? So that's why there's the Konomiya and the Delphoid there. So other options you could use for that is something like Velajul, although he's nat 5, but if you happen to have a Velajul, he's really good for this because it's a free turn immunity buff, and he cleanses at the same time. You could also use Chloe. Chloe is an option because she's got immunity and heals, right? But she doesn't have much other utility other than that. I think that's pretty much like it. Like, there's a lot of generic strategies for each ToA boss that will like, in terms of units, right? That will apply for most bosses. So I'll get to that in a second. But as far as Seara specific strats are concerned, just focus on either getting taunt or skill reset, right? That's the easiest way to keep her under control. And then, as far as the ads are concerned, stuns are your best bet, like group stuns or group freeze, right? Alternatively, you can run immunity and cleansing like I did. Now, on this floor 80, the trash waves on the first floor aren't too bad. There's nothing too special about them, so pretty much you just want to make sure you crowd control them. Now, this is a bit more like this is more of my generic ToA hard team, right? I am autoing it right now, just because trash waves are pretty easy and I'm pretty lazy, so that's why they're being autoed. But for the boss, I usually manual just because I don't want to waste energy, so I make sure that nothing goes wrong. Now, for my team, I'm using a lot of attack bar reduction, right? There's Varad and Wuchi. I know that not everyone is going to have this sort of team, so don't worry. Like, this is not the only way you can you can do ToA hard with. This is just one of many ways you can do it. So, as I said before, if you don't have things like ATB reduction, like Varad Wuchi is a bit more obtainable though. He's a 4-star, so I think more people will have Wuchi, but you may not have Varad, obviously, right? Wuchi is still good, right? Because attack bar reduction is very good for bosses as well, because bosses you can't stun, but you can reduce the attack bar, so you can use things like Spectra plus Wuchi to keep the boss under control. And maybe you can have like a Hua there if you can fit her into your team to further reduce single target attack bars. Then as for the trash waves, you're looking for things like or similar things to Varad, or so Water Homunculus is probably the one that people can potentially farm, even though it takes a lot of work, but it's it is technically farmable, I would say. Other alternatives are like Tyron, Prom being the light Grim Reaper. Some people use Frayne, which is the dark Grim Reaper. You have to make him move after your Beretta, and he'll stun random targets, but he does have potential mass stun. Alright. So other similar units to that. You can also use things like Cobalt Bomber or the Jokers that use bombs, like Jojo or Leebly if you happen to have a Leebly. Jojo is farmable, so he's I would say the most. He's like a potential free-to-play unit for ToA hard, because the bombs, even though it takes 2 turns to stun, it is a stun, right? So as long as you have another unit that can crowd control you know, what, like to let it, you know, tick over. So things like any mass freeze or mass stun gives you that turn, like to let the bomb tick over, right? And then after that, the bomb will like, you know, stun them the next turn. They can still resist it, but if you run like extra bombers, you can add like extra layers of bombs, and you know, combined with Mav, you should be able to, you know, bomb them quite often before they move. Now for Poseidon, keep in mind that his first skill returns debuffs to you. It's not so bad with Mav because Mav's got elemental advantage, so he may not necessarily transfer it over. But as like, because you're gonna taunt him, right? If you're running Mav. But pretty much same sort of thing applies to, like, if you can do Seara, you should be able to do Poseidon. The same sort of principle applies. You just want to crowd control all his ads. They don't do anything special unless they move, right? So the thing is, the wound hacks being the dark towers on the far left and far right. They can self cleanse, right? So you have to make sure they don't move. Make sure they're stunned every turn or frozen. That way they can't cleanse off their dots. Okay, but of course, you know, being ToAH hard, none of them have violent procs or anything. So, you know, despair and stuff is king in this this sort of environment. The Fukos, which are the Wind Lich, they don't have anything special. They do have a shield that they gain every turn, but as long as you have a lot of dots on them, you'll just kill through the shield eventually. And if you can stun the Wound Hawks, chances are the Fukos will probably be stunned as well. So, you know, as long as they don't move, they're not going to hurt your team. Poseidon though, you can either taunt him like, you know, other bosses you would taunt, or you can reduce attack bar, right? So people who are lucky enough to have Hua, you know, even though she's got elemental disadvantage, it's still fine because you should be taunting with a Mav anyway, and your Hua can just go single target on Poseidon to keep reducing his attack bar. I believe if you even if you glance, I think you can still reduce attack bar because some people use Hua in Giants for that purpose. So even though Poseidon's water, I'm pretty sure it still works on him. If you don't have Hua, then Spectra is the alternative, but it's not as consistent obviously because it's only on his third skill, whereas Hua reduces attack bar with every attack. But you can use, still use Spectra. It will still slow him down because you got the slow debuff and he does push back a little bit. But you probably need additional attack bar reducers to help keep him under control. You don't want him to move too often. Like, it's okay to let him move like once every now and then eventually, because you should have him taunted with a unit, right? And apart from that, it's pretty much just rinse and repeat. He doesn't, as long as he doesn't use any of his his proper skills, he shouldn't do that much damage to you. All right. Yeah. Apart from that, I mean, you could potentially just use like a very tanky team. I didn't do it for this one, but it is possible to use just like a lot of. You can use things like Brian, Veromos to stun. Like Brian is also the stun, but he's more as like a attack breaker, and as like a reviver as well. Then you run Beretta and a healer. You can do Bella or Chasun if you have her, that sort of thing. And just like one more unit that does crowd control. So probably something like a Spectra or a Hua. That will work too, as long as everyone's tanky. Right? You need HP, like pretty good HP on everyone. Okay, so he's pretty simple, I feel. Craka. Okay, so Craka recently, she's with Infernos on her ads, and they were bugged, but this one I recorded after they fixed the bug. So if you missed out, that's a bit unfortunate, but it's not that game breaking. It made it easier for sure, but you can easily get around like the Infernos anyway. The bug was basically that the Infernos did very little damage when they exploded, right? It wasn't intended, they're supposed to do quite a large amount of damage. So the proper way, obviously, the proper Infernos will pretty much one-shot your unit, especially on ToAH 90, if you don't have ATB, sorry, if you don't have sorry, I had a blank there, but they will one-shot you because it's a very high floor, right? Because they have a lot of base attack. Sorry, I was a bit distracted there. My apologies. Anyway, now for this floor, like this particular floor, this one you may have a bit of trouble with because of the fedoras, right? People usually will complain about fedoras because they cleanse, right? They cleanse and put immunity up, so it's very annoying for auto, right? So if you can bring enough crowd control to stop them from moving, alright, then yeah, sure, you can auto, but otherwise you might need to manual it and make sure that they don't move. Otherwise they'll buff immunity and cleanse all the debuffs, and that will make those Fucos much more annoying to kill, obviously, right? So yeah, make sure you bring plenty of crowd control for this one. One other thing I just remembered is you can see that the Spectre is on very low health. So because the reason is because the second skill uses health as part of the attack, right? Don't worry about that on auto because he can't kill himself with it, okay? But if you do bring a healer, it's nice because otherwise, if anything sneezes on him, he'll just die, right? So unless you're confident that nothing will move, then just be careful with using Spectre on auto, especially if you don't have a healer, I should say. Now this second part of this, like this second floor, no, it's not anywhere near as hard. Okay, so pretty much if you can get past the first floor, you should be able to get past this because I can't actually remember what the Phantom Thieves do, but I think they have like a self cleanse. Oh no, they do have like an invisibility buff or something. So you do want to make sure that they don't move. But if they move, it's not as bad as Fedora's moving. So yeah, just pretty much just bring crowd control units. Bombs will still work as well here. There's like nothing wrong with using bombs. So there's plenty of ways to do it, free to play. Now the way to deal with these Infernos is you want them to die to damage over time or bombs. Bombs. Sorry, I accidentally combined the two. So what? So as long as they don't die to a direct hit, they won't explode in your face, right? So what I'm doing here is I'm making sure none of the Infernos move first, and just slowly stacking up the dots with Beretta. In the meantime, I'm making sure Craka doesn't move, and also that that she's taunted as well. Okay, so again, like other bosses, you don't want the boss to move, right? Especially on these high floors. They'll do a lot of damage, but they also, some of them have very like game-changing abilities. So for example, Craka, if she moves, she can resurrect one of the Infernos. That's very awkward because they'll be on very low health. They'll also have an invincibility buff, and she also resets the cooldown, like their cooldowns. So yeah, you want to make sure that she doesn't do that. Alright, so keep her taunted, or keep her at her attack bar low. Okay, so you can use a combination of Beretta, Hua, Spectra, that sort of thing, to stop her from moving. Now, once the Infernos are low enough, you can just let them take a turn and let the dots kill them, right? Because even on this like level 90 floor, they have very little health, right? I have no armor break, no attack buff, and I'm just like slowly cleaving them down with like bad AoEs, right? Because Phoenix Fury doesn't really have a good multiplier. Varad's not on crit damage or anything, so you can see how much damage they've taken like after this, right? So once Craka is by herself, it's pretty easy, right? So you just have to stop her from moving, and when you don't have to worry about there's like ads like on the side, it's a lot easier because you can use AoE like resets and stuff like that. Because if there was like a very low Inferno just hanging around, I would be very wary of using things like Varad's attack bar reset, right? And that's pretty much it. So just make sure that you don't get the Infernos too low, because if you get them too low and you accidentally kill them with an AoE, then they'll explode. Okay. Now that's pretty much it for the bosses for this month. I will probably will try to do this every month, alright, for floors 70, 80, and 90. The reason I doing only these floors is because I think that the lower floors, anyone who's a veteran player should be able to do them, and most of them are not really like strat, like they don't really involve strats because the stats aren't that great. Like as long as you have good runes, you should be able to brute force all of them. But from 70 onwards, they start to get a bit tougher, especially with certain like boss combinations. And also because I feel 70 is probably the most important one because it's got the second Devilmon, like free Devilmon for the month, alright? And I think 80 is also quite important because, especially for free-to-play players, or people who don't really want to spend too much money, you get 300 crystals, and that's quite a large amount in my opinion. And 90, well, it's the hardest floor before the boss, and I've already got boss like floors done. So yeah, pretty much that's all I needed to talk about. These are just the runes of the monsters I use, so you can have a look at those. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So hope this has been helpful. And yeah, and I will be doing it. I'll try to do it again next month. And that way you have a reference every month, alright, to see how to do a floor. And if I happen to miss a month, or like even actually for people who are new to the game, you can still use this sort of strat on normal, right? Probably you won't have access to the units as such, but yeah, you can do it. So yeah, I will leave you with that. Alright, so that's pretty much all I needed to talk about. Thanks again for watching, guys. I hope this is helpful, hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.